whether when you're looking at it that way, it's very. I think there's layers to it. If you just look at physical time, then you can, just from science, you can just go back 6,000 years, and that makes sense. And so it does very much make sense to have a 7-day week in 6,000 years. But I think there's depth beyond that, and I think there's a notion in the Bible that time ends, and this is getting quite deep straight away. So it's kind of like each week of creation. So creation week kind of corresponds to like a 7,000-year period. That's something to say we want other 7,000-year periods, because the whole idea of a week is there's another week that's following it. But it's a bit like going to bed and waking up again, going to bed and waking up again. And I think life and death is a bit like that, in the same way. And it's figured in sleep. You go to sleep and you wake up and you're alive again. But death is a bit like going to sleep and then waking up again. But that's like, this is trying to reconcile quite a lot of deep and difficult things.
So I guess simply, David, what
in a very much more simple, scientific way.
Don't worry about all that. I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not asking you to kind of bring or kind of bear the burden of the entire theology. I'm just asking, what does David believe in? What does David think is rational? What has David come to the conclusion of? So pertaining, and correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to Earth and what we see around us coming in 6 days, you think it's not literal? It could be metaphorical, it could be long, we don't understand time.
Well, it does kind of make sense that it's 6 days.
6 exact days, yeah?
But a day, the way I think a day is defined is as a period of life.
That's in line actually with what we believe in as well.
So, and that's it makes kind of very interesting things, because you can have a day that lasts 1,000 years, so it's life for 1,000 years, and you can split a day in two and have 2 days in one 24-hour cycle if you have an eclipse. And so there's lots of, it makes the whole idea of a day is kind of flexible, but it's a period of light. Right. And I think it's kind of figurative of larger cycles, because you have 7-year cycles and 49-year cycles.
Okay, brilliant. So David, what do you believe about God? Tell me the qualities that you believe of God, characteristics, etc.
Well, it depends on what God you're thinking of, and
you as David, because you follow the Bible. The Bible has a depiction of a God. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Do you think there's something missing?
I think that I just tend to believe it as it's like it shows itself, it kind of proves itself, it's its own witness. So it has prophecy, it argues from prophecy.
No, I'm saying who is God? Like, tell me about the God that you believe in.
God is, in some sense, the word God is simply the author of the Bible.
The
author of the Bible. I think that's like a kind of one way of defining God, that's kind of, and then you can examine that, like, well, is this author, accurate or true?
Yeah.
But I think the Bible itself kind of describes, has a notion of God answering people according to their view of Him. And so, like, if we have, like, idolatry, or whatever our idols are, or whatever our view of God is, that's how God answers to us. And I think there's a call, there's a strong hinting in the Bible and a call in the Quran to be merciful. It says in the Psalms, I think, to the merciful I will show myself merciful, and to the froward I'll show myself froward. So like, whatever's going on and whatever condemnation people might come under, there's a kind of transcending view that he's merciful.
So one thing is how God is seen by people. For example, how humans see God is how God will be with you. So that's more like a kind of soothing way of God saying that, look, if you see me as merciful, I'll see you, I'll be merciful to you or whatnot. Of course, God is merciful, but that's what I want to know. Like, what are the characteristics of God? Is he powerful? Is he merciful? Can he be likened with creation? Can he not be likened with creation? I want you to kind of, figuratively, of course, paint a picture, although not literally, but characteristically, about the qualities that you think are logical of God.
Well, I'm not sure I used logic at the time, but I think it's more reason.
They're both interrelated, no?
Well, when you work within any logical system, there are always truths in that system that you can't discern because you're working within a limited system. And so you kind of, and like the call of these books is the holy books is to kind of take you beyond that, is to take you outside a limited domain of thinking into a higher way of thinking, as well as to access a God.
I get that.
But so to touch on some of the things that you might be thinking of, is like one of the things is that the law, I don't see the instruction of God as being necessarily one of condemnation. That's the kind of the one that should induce guilt, because that's the kind of, maybe as a child that's how you think, but there's actually a benefit in understanding how the world operates, or how the earth operates, and how God operates, and how to operate within that. And so it's a blessing then to understand these things. It's like,
sorry, it's just technology. It's just ridiculous.
Well, in the beginning, IT was very good.
That? You'd see it as very good. Yeah, it's ridiculous. If technology does what it's supposed to, it's good. If not, flip the neck. But David, what's interesting here is, I think when it comes to religion, what's very important to understand is because there is a concrete objective. Yeah, love of God, of course, but there is a heaven. You believe that, I believe that. There is a hell. You believe that, and I believe that. People that don't accept Jesus as the Lord and Savior, their destiny is not looking like a good one. And we say that somebody who doesn't accept Allah and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a final messenger, of course, the fate is not looking good either. Now, can we say this person's going to hell or not? We don't know, because we don't know, their journey might change or whatnot, but that's the general principle. Now, bearing that in mind, David, I would then posit the following, that surely the essence or the belief that their fate rests upon has to be something that's discernible, has to be something that's understandable by people of different intellects, people, cultures, something that can be picked up by a layman, by a professional. I'll give you an example. For example, if somebody asks a Muslim, what's your definition of a God? I'll give a four-pronged definition. Say he is God, the one. Say he is the one. Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Say he is God, the one. The independent. The independent, he does not beget nor exist like him. And then they say, okay, what's your perception of God, or what do you, we worship him alone, and then we follow the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Before him there were other prophets, etc., etc. But for now, we follow the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because he is the one that's come at the end. Now, is something clear? You can explain that to a child, you can explain that to an adult. Believe in one God, Muhammad, peace be upon him, is his final messenger. However, when it comes to, say, and this is maybe where you could chime in, that's where I feel Christianity falls short. When it comes to their fundamental doctrinal beliefs, I don't think it's accessible to the layman, and I think that's a problem. Because
I guess my belief is that if you want to understand how to get to salvation, read the Bible. And the Bible is able to make you well. I mean, that's the claim of the book. But we might be talking about different things here because there are many Bibles, right? And so I use the English Bible, which is the King James Bible, the authorized version. And, the modern Bibles, they're based on modern. They can't be right in a way because the texts that they're based on change before the translation expires. It's like they're always changing. I mean, maybe they're right in some sense, but they don't heal. They divide and they make sick. And I mean, this just causes me to be strong in my belief that I identify that. You see, there's 4 horsemen in the Apocalypse. In Revelations, four horsemen. And Apocalypse doesn't mean destruction itself. Apocalypse just means revelation. And
according to?
Well, it's just what the word means. It means away from the hidden. It means kind of revelation. I mean, the word revelation is translation from the Greek apocalypse.
Oh, so you're looking at the origin of the word.
Yeah. So I look at etymology. I mean,
right.
One of the things in Christianity is gifts of the Holy Ghost, or gifts of the Holy Spirit, and it's like you just need to ask for them. You kind of need to ask for them, and then you get given them. But I'm not like, it's not like I wake up one day and I understand all languages. It's just that I start understanding languages through my heart to understand more and more about languages. So I study those things, and and I understand things deeper.
So David, you said to understand it, one needs to look at the Bible. When a person looks at the Bible, the concept of Trinity can be argued, and there's pros and cons. But do you
depends what concept it is, right?
But do you see, David? That's the fundamental concept of Christianity. That's
not. You see, I've never said I was a Christian.
Oh, you're not a Christian?
I follow believe the Bible. Word Christian only occurs twice in the Bible.
Right.
And it's identified with people at Antioch. They were first called Christians, and then Peter mentions this. If anyone suffers as a Christian. So how do you define Christians? You see, if you're defining it according to the Wikipedia page.
What if you're defining according to Paul?
What's a Paul?
You said Paul, isn't it? Or was it Peter?
Paul. No, you see, Paul's an interesting character because there's a proverb. There's a proverb that's not in the book of Proverbs, but it's said 3 separate times, and it's a question, and it is Saul among the prophets? Because there's an Old Testament Saul who became before David. He was made king.
But who mentioned the word Christian that you just mentioned? Was it Peter or Paul?
Well, it's in Acts, which was written by Luke. Now you see, when you've got the 4 Gospels, Matthew and John are disciples of Jesus. Or at least you can identify those authors with disciples of Jesus. Luke and Mark, well, Luke explicitly is second-hand account, and Mark wasn't one of the disciples. He wasn't one of the 12 disciples. and he's perhaps more. I don't. It's a less clear one. I think there's perhaps.
The word Christian is mentioned, you said 3 times, yeah? 2 times. And the second time you said it's mentioned by?
Peter.
I confused it with Paul, that's why I think we went on a tangent. So you said then it depends how you define Christian. Then I say, would you define yourself as Christian as per the definition of Peter?
I try to avoid, something I'd say I believe the Bible.
Okay, alright. But you believe, okay, then that's fine. So the word or the theology of Trinity, do you believe in that?
Depends what theology you have. I mean, I can argue in various ways different concepts of what it might mean, but it's not that's what's central to me.
You don't have to argue.
What's central to me is what it says in 1 John 5:7. The 3 that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, and these 3 are one. And so it's all the Word of God. It's all the Word of God. The Holy Ghost is just, you read the words and those are the words of God.
So you don't take Trinity as, if you don't accept it, that's going to be a problem. Like you can read.
I don't see the point in arguing about it. I don't see. It's not fundamental to my definition of what I believe. It's like I don't even know how to define it, and it's like that's fine. If it's defined in the way that as just a statement, it's like that statement. I can make it make anything. So
what's central to your belief?
I just read the holy books and they're a guide to the way. And I suppose I believe, I study science and mathematics, but my understanding of those things is enriched 10 times by through the Scriptures.
Okay, so David, why the Bible and not the Quran?
I didn't say not the Quran. I think it's a beautiful and I think.
Shall I tell you why I said that? Because you said I believe in the Bible, I'm not a Christian. Because you didn't mention the Quran.
I know. I assume. I hid it slightly.
Okay.
I hid it slightly. I am a mathematician. I've been studying number patterns in the Bible.
Don't dare it. If you do it, give it to me. Give it to me. Okay, I can play.
What's the problem, Tom? What's the problem, Tom? What's the problem? Why'd you whip it? 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 Don't hold it. Why'd you whip it? Why'd you whip it? Why'd you whip it? What's the problem? Why'd you whip it?
You can come here if you want. You can come here if you want.
It's so good. It's so good. Let's go with him. Let's go with him. Let's go with him. What when I got you? What when I got you?
Make sure that's filmed, bro. That's a threat. It's threatening you. Ripping something and then being beaten up for it is not the same thing. Yeah. So, David.
So I studied number patterns. I've been studying number patterns in the Bible, in English and Greek and Hebrew for some time. I come to the Quran and it's like, well, I can't even read this alphabet, but I could transcribe the letters one at a time, work out the numerical values, and see beauty there. And then when I hear it, it speaks to my soul. So how can I reject it? And then when I get a vague sense by reading the translation, but that's not really what I'm after. I'm after to know the Arabic.
What languages have you learned other than English?
Well, I just know. I'm just able to.
As a Muslim, it's a reward to help someone. I've got a problem.
Sorry, brother. I'm in a conversation at the moment. Once we finish, I can come to you, no problem.
Yeah.
But if you wait, because I don't wanna, I'm having a conversation with him.
Sort of like a scholar.
I'm not a scholar, brother.
Sort of like I know you do your program. Then now you're a good Muslim. You're a dawah Muslim. So there's an issue. I want you to, as a brother, you could help me.
Yeah, I'll definitely try. If you wait for me, inshallah.
I mean, the thing is, any way I describe God, anything I say about God doctrine, it's like,
So sorry, I asked you a question and then I just got distracted. I was asking, have you learned any other language other than English?
well, I know a little bit of lots of languages.
Oh, really?
So it's like, it's just.
All right.
इसका साइन पड़ा है और हाइड्रोएक्टिव हो गई
आ गया
पिछले हफ्ते से पंप हो रही थी अब फट गई है
Sometimes even the surroundings have an effect as well. So you were saying it would be interesting to know which languages.
Well, as I say,
Done a bit of Arabic?
I'm Arabic. I mean, it seems to be a good start to simply listen to the Quran because then but you can't. It somehow has to be brought into real life.
Oh, agreed.
I think that Allah will show me the right way to kind of. Learn these words.
Yes.
That's not how a child learns.
Yeah.
Allah made our brains to first listen and just understand by listening, and then you start to speak later.
That's
so
right.
when I'm trying to say I'm learning these other languages, I don't really speak any of them. I might attempt to, but not in a natural way. And it's like, you first have to listen, and I would say, there's something, it speaks to the soul. It speaks to my soul, these things, and I would listen to it during the night, even sometimes, even when I'm asleep, and then I'll wake up, and then things will be revealed to me. I mean, this has only just been doing this in the last few weeks. Things are revealed to me that I've not seen before. That I've not about. I kind of work on the timeline as well, and there's a relationship between the Quran and I think Muhammad is one of the horsemen of the apocalypse. I think it's one of the messages that helps to unlock revelation. It's a kind of an important thing, and the view of Christians mostly misunderstanding the Bible and just repeating things that they've heard and not really knowing what they're talking about. Well, that's kind of my view too. But I see a way of God in that, in that there's a verse I think in. I can't remember, maybe it's in Isaiah or something. It says, I will lead the blind by a way they know not. So Paul, through all that kind of darkness of Paul, he's still leading people. And the sophistication of Paul at Romans is like the kind of Roman gospel. Like, you're going to burn in hell, and it's like you don't do this, and just do what I say. But it's more conflicted than that, because he's saying he's conflicted, right? And that he only sees partially. But Allah is kind of like, Hagar's God was the God who sees. Thou seest me. And there's a well, she called this well that she was at, Lahaywa. And I think that's where Allah comes from. I think it's short for Lahaywa. And so it's like the God who sees. And so...
When you say that's where Allah comes from, what do you mean?
The word La. That's why I connect that, La, to lahairoi in the Bible, which is a kind of longer word that kind of means something like thou seest. So Ra is kind of...
I mean, even if you look at, if you type in God in Aramaic, in the Aramaic Bible, you will see the word Allah. So, I mean, Hebrew, Arabic and Aramaic, they're all Semitic languages.
Aramaic is a well, I mean, all Semitic languages, they're all Hebrew languages. Hebrew was an ancestor of Abraham. So really, it's full of Hebrew.
So what I found really fascinating was that as somebody who doesn't identify as a Muslim, you play the Quran, you said at night, and you find it to be very soothing.
It speaks to my soul. And I think, I don't, you see, when I read the Bible, there are all sorts of things that seem paradoxical. But in that digging into those, it kind of lifts my understanding. Now, the things that might be tricky to resolve at first with me, but I don't think they're irreconcilable, and I think that we have to get into kind of quite a detailed and complex conversation to be able to deal with that.
I understand, and you're right. You're right.
But I think that the Quran speaks well of the Bible and the law, and I think that Christians should learn the Quran, and I think Muslims should know the Bible. But yes, stay away from these modern Bibles because they're dead. I mean, maybe, I don't know, right? I mean, you have to live what path that ours put you on, and I think I have to live my path and whatever my path is, and I think, and I see, it's deliberate that God reveals different things to different people and puts people in different paths. Because the world wouldn't function if we were all the same person doing the same thing. If you had a 9 billion...
And it's the consequence of free will as well, isn't it?
Well, right.
Yeah.
But somehow we're brought in with like I feel like I think that we're brought in with a name and an ancestry that hints at our purpose here on earth, and we have choices. We have many choices, but the most satisfying choices is when we're working harmoniously. And I think that's something that we're heading into now, a kind of collapse of a degeneration of the kind of the current system, especially in the areas of usury, and a more peaceful era being brought in. I mean, that's. But you see, if you want to ask me, I think the point I wanted to make before was that, you can ask my opinion about things. Go and ask Allah, read the Quran. Go and ask God, read the Bible. But there's a very beautiful thing in the Tao Te Ching that's which says something like, it's like the way that can be walked is not the way, and the way that the name that can be named is not the way that can be walked is not the eternal way, and the name that can be named is not the eternal name. So the essence is none of these things are eternal, and any concept of God that we have is necessarily imperfect because He's much greater than we.
I agree with you. So, David, when it comes to, say, the Quran, what criteria do you have to believe? Because just the way you see the King James Bible compared to, say, other Bibles, and you're saying they don't do justice, things have been added in, things have been taken out, it's not the Bible, and the word that you used was, a word of strong disapproval. So because things have been added in and taken out, that's exactly how God, Allah, talks about the New Testament and the Old Testament as well. That once upon a time it was the Torah, it was the Injil, but thereafter it was changed. People changed it by their hands.
That doesn't mean to say that God didn't preserve it. I mean, that's one of the promises in the King James, that He preserved His word.
That would be interesting because I haven't come across that.
I'll show you it. It's in Psalm 6. Is it Psalm 6? No. Psalm 12. You can find it. Psalm 12. Psalm 12, verses 6 and 7. Lord, are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times. Thou shalt keep them, O Lord, thou shalt preserve them from this generation forever.
Thou shalt.
Yeah.
Thou, isn't that referring to the people? Like, you need to do this.
No, that's referring to God.
Thou shalt.
Thou, it's referring to, when it says thou,
Yeah.
this is the Psalms. It's the Psalms addressed to God.
Because my old English isn't very good. But
Well, thou is just the singular. Thou is just the singular. Thee and thou, and of course thee is in the theology.
so thou.
It's just a singular, so it's you singular. So the Psalms
Yes,
address
you.
the Lord.
God's not saying Himself, though, isn't it? That I'm going to
No,
preserve it.
these Psalms are written by David in general.
You recorded? Oh, you got sorry, mate.
These Psalms are written by David, and they're addressed to God. They're songs, they're kind of songs of worship.
Okay, so
So
David
these
is
songs,
telling
these
God,
songs.
you
Yeah.
preserve it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
he's a prophet.
But do you see, it's a prophet. According to the Bible, it's a prophet telling
thing-
God. So that's why I was interested because
Okay, so there's a problem here. It's like a
Yeah.
circular argument.
Yeah.
But it's much like the Quran. It's the beauty of it. And what I'm looking at is mathematical structure
yeah,
and its operational effectiveness, things like that. It's like I'm playing these things, they're working, right?
Yeah.
So, I find that the major difference is when I try it's like I don't have the same effect when I try to study a modern Bible. It's like I lose interest in the Bible, I get sick, I get depressed. If I'm just taken away, I'm left with that. So I wouldn't even touch it anymore. I'd rather.
you mean you don't get
I'd
that
rather
soothing
not-
from the
I'd
Bible?
not
Yeah?
read- I'd rather not read from the KJV. Fine. But I think I'd rather not read the NIV. I'd rather not read the Bible at all than read the NIV.
So
Except
yeah,
I'm going to be among Christians and help to lift them out of their darkness.
I got you. So here's what the Quran says, which just based on your research, it might be interesting. It's 15:9. And because you're interested in the Arabic, I can read the Arabic.
It's helpful to do that because that will speak to my soul.
Yeah.
So if you read that first and then read the.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا نحن نزلنا الذكر وإنا له لحافظون. It is certainly we who have revealed the reminder, and it is certainly we who will preserve it. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ فِي شِيَعِ الْأَوَّلِينَ. Indeed, we sent messengers before you, O Prophet, among the groups of early people. And then it goes on, but no messenger ever came to them without being mocked. But it was this point that I really wanted to emphasize, a categorical statement, and it is certainly we, so this is God speaking, it is certainly we who will preserve it. So David, here's the kind of theology within Islam, that we believe once upon a time Judaism was correct, Christianity was correct. That's why there's so much overlap. So if you and I, we were alive at the time of Moses, we would address him as Moses, peace be upon him. We'd be following the Torah, we'd be following the commandments or whatnot. But thereafter, after Moses passed away, then people started changing the book. And when people started changing the book, thereafter God sent another revelation. That revelation was the Injil, or that's known as the New Testament. But thereafter, we believe, of course, Jesus was raised to the heavens and shall return again. Christians believe he died, but he will return again. Jews believe, of course, he didn't come. That's going to be his first coming when he comes again. But all three believe that he will come again. But nevertheless, after Jesus went, you've demonstrated the point really well. The Bible, you've got the Roman Catholic Bible, you've got this Bible, you've got that Bible. One's got 66 books, one's got 73 books. And there's entire books that have been put in. Some say no, they're aberrations, they get taken out. But nevertheless, we say that the Quran is the final testament. There will be no book after it because there is no messenger after. Therefore, you see,
you're adding a lot of, you can complete that thought if you like, but you're making a lot of arguments and assumptions.
That's fine, you can come back. I'm open to that. But if I just complete that, it's just a little bit. And because that there is no prophet to come after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, therefore, normally a prophet comes with the written text. So he teaches the written text to the people. However, because there is no other prophet, then the text has to be preserved. Now, how is the text preserved? We can get into that if you're unaware.
Right.
But so, what assumptions do you think I've made or inconsistent?
So for a start, I think a prophet can come again. So just because, there's a notion of in Revelation, there's this notion of these prophets that shall return, and without trying to thrash out the exact nature of this, the prophet can come again, and I think that's important. And then, like, some people think they're Moses and Elijah, but in some sense, I think that Muhammad was Moses. I think that Muhammad. This is a kind of hypothesis because I've not been thinking about this very long. I think in some very simple sense, Muhammad might be a reincarnation of Moses. And it's like, even when they spoke to Jesus in the Gospels, it's like, art thou Elias? Well, Elias was a prophet from the Old Testament, right? So there is he went up to heaven on it was Elijah, he went up to heaven on a chariot, right? So why can't, if he can come again, how did Muhammad go to heaven? Why can't Muhammad come again?
But then here's the response that we would say. We would say that you're using the Bible as a yardstick, isn't it? So that's the basis of you saying that it's there's certain assumptions being made. But that's why I made our position clear.
Okay, but your position is based on those extra assumptions that I don't make, that a prophet can't be reincarnated.
Yeah, but just to clarify, when we say that the Quran is the book from God, by default, that implies to us, the only book from God implies that the Injil, the New Testament, the Old Testament, has been changed, and to us it's no longer reliable. Now, if something's changed and you don't know from where it is changed and God has sent a preserved version, then that's our yardstick. That's the yardstick by what we go by. Now, indeed, the conversation can center around what's your evidence that is the final testament and that is preserved, blah, blah, blah. However, that's what we go by. And according to the Quran, La Nabiyya Ba'di, and the sayings of the Prophet, where the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, Ana Khatamun Nabiyyin, and La Nabiyya Ba'di, and the Prophet was a seal of the prophets. That's the one that's mentioned in our primary scripture. So that's what we take.
Right, but what you're not doing is pointing me at verses of the Quran that are dissuading me from my position.
No, when the Prophet, peace be upon him...
You're summarising an analysis that I think has been sufficient for a time, but there's further revelations, there's further unlocking to be done.
So you're saying you want something categorical in the Quran that specifies that there shall
I'm
be
saying
no
I don't
prophet
hold
after?
to anything except the holy books.
Okay.
So, and those are the guide, right? So, I understand that there's a certain amount of logic that you're having to apply on top.
Yeah.
And I think
No, that's fine.
Allah's smarter than that, you see.
Yeah.
I think God's smarter than that. And I think that there are things that can be so, and actually I think the test is, I think one of the tests is being able to produce a surah like what is it, Surah 74?
No, produce a surah
like any of the.
Yeah. The Quran.
So actually, I haven't studied the Quran enough to know what all these different tests are. But I think these things are answerable now.
So in chapter 33 verse 40 it says, but he is the messenger of Allah and the last of the prophets. That's
Well,
pretty
he was the last of the
categorical.
prophets at that point, wasn't he?
Nah.
Well, no, but okay, so
You wanted something from the Quran.
Well, but that's interesting because there's a secret. Jesus kind of revealed himself to his inner disciples in a special way, and in some ways you can call this the Trinity, but he revealed himself to disciples in a special way. He appeared that they were looking at Jesus, and then suddenly they saw three people. They saw Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. And now, if in some sense those are all the same person, because that is the idea of the Holy Bible, is that the law, the prophets, and the New Testament are all one book, right?
Yeah.
And if
Christians deny the Old Testament, they say it's been abrogated, it was there once upon a time, we don't accept those verses or whatnot. That's their thing.
problem.
Okay, interesting.
That's their problem. I mean, that's such a shallow.
You take it holistically.
Even if it is the law is in some sense dealt with, and that Jesus has made us free.
Yeah.
In some sense, how are you sure of Jesus' witness? My witness is not true, because there's a principle in the law that you need two witnesses. You need to be able to look at it from two different points of view and have them concur. It's like going from just looking at something with one eye to two eyes. And it becomes three-dimensional. It becomes, you perceive it in a deeper way, but also you need two witnesses just to agree to get the truth.
Right.
And so I think with God all things are possible, and you can get two different viewpoints to agree. But when you do, hopefully you bring light to both people. So like when we come into a deeper understanding of each other, there's light to be had on both our paths.
But the thing, David, is that if the consequence is going to be so categorical and so severe, then
I'm not sure it is.
I mean, heaven and hell is something that's pretty much in all of our scriptures, Old Testament, New Testament, Psalms.
Jesus talks about hellfire, being in danger of hellfire. I think I've not already said this, but I think that in some sense that the modern Bibles are hell, because the full.
You really don't like the modern Bibles, do you?
The four messengers in Revelation. It's the white horse.
Why do you feel so strongly against them? Is it the interpolation and the taking out, or is it?
Because if you just make any examination of them, well, first, I mean, how do you understand the Bible except you're a believer? How do you understand scriptures except you're a believer? And so these are people, but they're relying on man's sayings. There's lots of things in the Bible that you say, so you can't trust in that. I don't, you could point me at your scholars or I wouldn't trust them unless they can show me in the Quran. And the same with the Bible. It's like you've got to.
But there's a difference here, though. The difference is with the Quran, I can objectively show you that it is a. But with the Bible, neither do you have.
We've checked some.
Yeah, like the four people that wrote the Gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. No Christian has given a chain of narration going from them to Jesus that we can verify that they had a connection to Jesus. So these are four anonymous authors.
But that's not how you should read it, because if you go back to Deuteronomy,
it's not about reading it, David. It's about verifying something that somebody said. Because you're saying
just because some things in the Bible, though it might be true in some sense, it doesn't. You've got to be aware of who the author is, right? And
that's my point. Yeah,
and
you can't verify them.
Well, it's more subtle than that, because these things are prefigured.
Prefigured.
It's like it's the prophecy of these things. I shall speak to them in another tongue.
Yeah, but if somebody
the prophecy of these things is all in the Old Testament. You need to be able to follow the patterns of prophecy that prefigure all the things that happened since, and even the corruption of the Bible. When Jesus was the Word of God in a figure, right? He's the Word of God. The things that happen to him are the things that happen to the Word of God, are happening to the Word of God now. They put a crown on him, they say he's Christ, they put a robe on him and mock him.
We're sidestepping one point though.
And say, make him king.
Yeah.
But in doing so, they're actually fulfilling God's, even though they're against him, they're still fulfilling God's purpose. And when they flay him and they flay his flesh, that's the corruption of the word. But he heals. He's resurrected.
And that's fine.
But
the thing, David, is we still haven't addressed the problem. You're saying that the New Testament should be taken, the four kind of people that have narrated the gospel should be taken because it's mentioned that somebody will come after.
Read something in the Bible and say that applies to me. I should do what this person.
No, we keep sidestepping the point. Let me just maybe expand upon it a little bit. What I'm saying is, let's just say the New Testament does allude to the fact that somebody else will come. There'll be a new scripture. Okay, fine. Now these four anonymous authors have claimed all of these happenings. Okay, the first step that you do, before even entertaining the fact that it's a part of the Bible, that it's, it's acceptable, Jesus said this, Jesus said that, even before that, we need to affirm, are these people who they say they are? Do they have access to information? And in order to do that, in those days, you needed a chain of narration, like who did you hear it from, who did they hear it from, and who did they hear it from? So my question is...
I was born in the 20th century. I don't have, even if you're presenting me with all these chains of whatever, it's like I'm believing this in a it's like.
No, but that's the problem.
The thing is,
because I can show you a methodology, I can show you the applied methodology, and you can go home and you can check. There's checks and balances in place.
Right. So this but I think the trump card is the checksums, is the mathematical nature of it, and that's why I'm looking at that because you're right in some sense that it's like you can always doubt these things. Even if it's operationally effective, it helps you heal, it does all these things. It's like, how can you really think? And it's like, I don't understand all the ways in which you claim that the Quran is preserved, because anyone can say, oh, this was copied accurately.
Fantastic.
Right.
I love that.
And so you could say that about the Bible. You could say it's not true about that. It's like, but there's something special about these books.
There is, David.
And I think it's this and this is my ongoing work. I'm not saying I'm done yet.
Of course.
But my ongoing work, and I can show you mathematical patterns in the Quran and King James Bible harmonize in a very
there's concentrism way. And there's fantastic patterns in both books. I would argue that there's I'll give you another pattern as well.
The question is like, how do you use that as proof? But
it's not necessarily.
But it's the same question as what do you mean by like write a surah like it? I mean, I put together some Arabic words. How can we prove that 100%? How can we just be more than 100% sure? How can we totally sure what we mean by that, so that we can present it to someone who's maybe not already bought into the idea and say, look, this is the evidence. If you want to read it, you can read it as a mathematician, or as a linguist or something like that, that we can just say, this is the proof. How can we do that? Because I think once we can do that for the Quran, we can do it for the Bible as well.
Okay, let's do a thought experiment.
Right?
Perfect. I love it. It's something that we can measure. It's something that we can compare. So here's how we do it for the Quran. Firstly, we say that, so this is a book. So this is a book from God. And if the claim is being made, it's for everybody, then it needs to be a book that's accessible to everybody.
Where's it say that?
Just bear with me. Just bear with me. So how would it be accessible? Accessible logically means somebody should be able to read it in a specific language. So the Quran is revealed in Arabic. Arabic is one of the top 5 languages spoken in the world. The New Testament, apparently the author is Jesus, who spoke Aramaic.
No.
He spoke Aramaic though. He didn't speak Aramaic?
No, he spoke Hebrew.
But he... Yeah.
But I would say he was...
Just bear with me here.
I think that's a conceit of the scholars that he spoke Aramaic. And actually it's part of the scriptures that they accused him of being a Samaritan. So I just don't...
No problem. But the point...
The
point still stands that even if we concede Jesus spoke maybe another language, it's a Semitic language, and that Semitic language is no longer alive today for us to access. It's not commonly spoken, it's not something that can be accessed.
I think that...
Let me just complete the point, yeah?
Yeah, carry on.
The Old Testament is revealed in Hebrew. Again, is not a live language that's spoken generally by the people. So if the argument and point is being made that this is a book for everybody, surely the language should be something that's accessible to everybody and should not be something that's accessible only by scholars, only by a certain class or a certain group of people. Go ahead.
So just read the books. I mean, that's how language works. That's how these books work.
That's not my point. My point is that if a book is claiming to be for everybody and it claims to be preserved, then surely any person should be able to access that language, which is not being restricted by the academic class.
Where does it claim? I'm not even sure the Bible claims to be. But it kind of claims to have gone out around the earth.
The Quran does.
Okay.
Because of the reason that,
The Bible, in some sense, did go out around it. But the blessing, you see, there was a promise in Abraham.
No, because Jesus said, I have only
that...
been sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He didn't say, I've been sent to everybody. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, I've been sent to everybody. The Quran is universal. Islam is universal. So you can't compare that with Jesus, who is sent for a specific...
Yeah, but that's part of the plan. That's part of the plan of the Bible. Is that, yes, he's sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? But then Paul takes this thing and promotes it, even though... Okay, to understand this, you have to go back to the rebellion of Korah. There's a time when people spoke against Moses and they swung their own censers and they produced their own fire. It's like, well, we don't need this Moses, we'll do our own thing. Fire came down upon them, burnt up all the people, but their censers were gathered up and made as brass plates on the altar. That's prefiguring of the Greek New Testament, because the brass plates through Daniel are associated with Greek.
Yeah, let's just come back to this for a second. So we're talking about preservation of scripture that can be measured either numerically or empirically. So the first thing that I said was the spread of the language. Yeah. The second thing is the Bible. I'm sure you'll agree. At its inception was copied. It was copied down. If somebody wanted a book, they would have to sit down and manually copy it down. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah. With the Quran, it was different. The Quran primarily was memorized. It was memorized from cover to cover.
I don't know that, but it's quite plausible. Yeah.
You know, but just allow me to just complete the point, and then because I've got you covered from both sides, it will make it easy for you. Not in a kind of nefarious way, in a way that it will aid the conversation. I've already thought of issues you could possibly have, and I've got you covered. Don't worry. So the Quran was memorized at that time, and you rightfully can argue, okay, that was done at that time or whatnot, but step forward and say that the Quran is memorized, and this is a cultural practice within Muslims to such a degree. You will not come across two families amongst the Muslims that do not have at least one person that's memorized the entire Quran. This is something that's done from a small age. You can go to any madrasa, at least 1 out of 30 parts of the Quran is memorized by kids. To such a degree that in Palestine there's a little girl as young as 6. She's the youngest that I've come across that has memorized the Quran from cover to cover. Now this is something that you might shrug and say, you know what, so what? But this is the reason why this is so interesting, David, is because this proves preservation to an average individual. Because somebody who's writing down the Bible, he can make a mistake. Then the person copying from them can make a mistake. So they've copied a mistake and made. Bible scholars, just to let me finish, the Bible scholars have labeled these terms as parablepsis. Parablepsis is one of them, and utilitarian, and
there's Arabic terms.
No. These are actually terms of Bible analysts, and yeah. So just parablepsis, if I remember correctly, are two sentences that end with the same word. So a copyist will homooutilitarian. Yeah, so two sentences.
Okay.
If I can just finish the point. Yeah.
Right.
If two sentences end with the same word, a copyist can tend to misalign. If two words in a sentence end with the same word, in one sentence you've got two words, sometimes a copyist could skip from one word to the other when they are copying and then going back. So with the Quran, that was limited because primarily the Quran was memorized and secondarily it was written down. So that's another way of preservation. Go ahead.
If two people, if like someone misremembers a recitation and gets it wrong,
yeah, good
they're
point.
corrected, right?
So at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Prophet memorized it.
Yeah.
He then passed it on to the companions. The Prophet was alive for at least 23 years.
Right.
In those 23 years, the companions, numerous companions, had memorized it from beginning to end. And this we know from chains of narration as well. And then they were sent to other countries. And then when they were sent to other countries, those companions who had memorized and had been authorized by the Prophet, peace be upon him, like Mu'adh ibn Jabal, so one companion, then when he went, he then passed it on. Those companions under his had memorized it and he was able to check it, and sometimes they would come to the Muslim lands and they would be able to read it in front of the Muslims. So there was this community of not only memorization but of also checking as well. Oh, you're reciting like this. Why are you reciting like this? Umar, peace be upon him, Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, the third caliph, he then would take those individuals to the Prophet, and the Prophet would say, yes, you can also recite it like this, and yeah, that's correct, that's not correct, or like this, like that. So in a period of 23 years, the Quran was not only memorized, it was written down, and it was put in a compiled form and given to one of the wives of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So that is not something, that's not a system that's present with the Old Testament.
Why not?
Because the Jews don't claim this, David. They don't
anymore, but it depends who you're speaking to.
Okay, in order for
they
you,
they were incredibly careful.
You made a good point.
The Masoretes were incredibly careful about how they preserved their work.
Yeah, let me just.
These are modern corruptions generally.
But even if they're modern corruptions, David, for you to say that we have the exact Old Testament, the chain needs to be continuous. It cannot be lost during the way. So if you say once upon a time they were meticulous, not anymore, or this, that means there's now.
It was printed in 1611. there was a translation that took like multiple Bible translations, and it was kind of perfected in 1611, 1610, but over from 1604 to 1610, over 7 years, and then published in 1611 and 1612.
And when were the disciples?
Sorry?
What time are we looking at the disciples?
But this is before that. They had the Greek and the Hebrew. The Masoretes were very good at preserving the Hebrew, and the Greek text.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about the New Testament. Okay, so the Old Testament.
The New Testament.
So Moses, when was Moses alive?
Okay, so the Romans, it's the Romans that have persecuted the Bible. It undermines. You know, you read the Bible and you realise that all this kind of the way the Romans operate was just like replace whatever religion it is with their own religion, and Christianity is not an exception. And like so most stuff like what you hear about Roman history, and even in modern times, history's changed in my lifetime. So I can't rely on any of that history, except.
But this is interesting because you're saying that there's a gap, then afterwards, but yeah.
Wait. So when you've got a written text, it's the same as when you've got your memorised text.
It's not the same.
Hang on a minute. It depends on what method of you use. If I'm copying a text out, or if I'm reading a text out,
yeah,
and everyone's got their copy of the text, and you're reading it out, and there's a mistake, you can say, hang on a minute, I've got a different thing, and then you can go back to older copies. Once you've got it established, you can go back to older copies.
Okay.
Right, okay.
That's an interesting point.
So you can do it in a good way, but the way that the modern biblical critics do is that they ignore all that, and they have insane methods for deciding what's the correct.
But there's an assumption.
They ignore the biblical idea that you need two witnesses, right?
Yeah.
If you've got the idea you need two witnesses to establish a text, you copy from multiple texts, and you don't just say, oh well, I might have made some mistakes, I'll just ignore them. You check, and you check against multiple copies.
There's an assumption being made though, because you're making good points, and I want to address them one by one.
Okay.
So when there's a couple, I don't want to miss your points, because I think it's a good intellectual exercise for me as well.
Okay.
So one of the points you made was, let's just say you're copying something. You will naturally get that checked by the people around you that also have that scripture as well. But what you're assuming is that there are multiple scriptures that have been completely copied at that time, at that place, which wasn't necessarily the case, and the Bible scholars don't say that as well. Okay. So one example would be, I go to a village, they have a copy of the Bible, they have a copy of the Bible, and that happened very often. It wouldn't be that there would be numerous copies of the Bible, because why would you coalesce all the copies of the Bible in one place? Naturally, somebody would come from a far off land, they would come, they would copy, and then they would go, and then they would copy and give to their people. So that's the typical process of the Bible, that when it would be copied, then you've got the copyist errors coming in, and that's when you look at the old manuscripts, you will see even frustrated people saying, stop adding your own bits into the Bible, because there was no way of verifying by memorization. Like, no one claims to have memorized the Old Testament cover to cover, and no one claims to have memorized the New Testament cover to cover. However, when it comes to the Quran, yeah, we do.
Okay. So when you look, if you just look like a couple of hundred years, actually, when they introduced, there was a thing called the majority text, which was just like, they had many texts that just all agreed, and so that was the text they used. It wasn't like just one text, it's like lots of texts all agree. It was called the majority text, because it was like, you might have a text that's got an error in it, but it's obviously got an error in it because it doesn't agree with all the other texts, right? It's just a one-off mistake. You need multiple witnesses to establish a text. So in the 19th century, when Westcott and Hort set up this idea of biblical criticism, they introduced new ideas about how you might, and they introduced what's called an eclectic text, and they find all sorts of texts which might not even be genuine texts, because they're not always have provenance or dating that the dated to be on. Or they've been preserved simply because they've been thrown away and not worn out. And it's like, but they get a text, and it's the only text without reading, and they'll say, and they'll use principles like that the rougher reading is more likely. It's like saying if this is less harmonious or less plausible, it's more likely that this was the original text and that a scribe somehow corrected it.
So you're saying these things
smooth it
came
out.
afterwards, and that's what you have an
those
issue with?
ideas,
Yeah.
which are nonsensical in biblical terms, and nonsensical in academic, in like any thinking man's terms, to any kind of sense of how you might establish the correct text. They'll allow a single text to corrupt the majority text. And their two favoured manuscripts, the Sinaiticus and the Vaticanus, they don't even agree with each other.
Yeah.
They say these are the best and oldest texts. But interestingly, they won't have them carbon dated. How do they date them? Well, they just say, we can tell from the style of writing.
That was actually ironically going to be the third pronged argument
so you're
of
going to use
preservation.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, the carbon dating, because we found 4 folios of the Quran, which has been carbon dated to the time of preservation, and it's not present in like a Muslim country. So there's the question of bias kind of leaves the realm there. It's actually in the University of Birmingham. You can Google this when you get a chance. It's in the University of Birmingham, and it's been carbon dated by the University of Oxford, and they've checked it with the Quran that we have today, and there's 100% word accuracy. So that was...
I think, are there spelling differences? Because I think sometimes these things are rendered slightly differently.
No, I'm talking about the skeletal structure, because the vowels and all of those things came later on, which traditional Arab doesn't really require doesn't require vowels necessarily. They know the skeletal structure and in that way. So it's fantastic. I mean, I've got a depiction of it. I've actually hung it in my living room because it's just a fantastic historical document. I don't obviously have the exact manuscripts. I wish I did.
These are.
But what do you think about that, David? Because
I think.
Is that not amazing?
I don't know, because I haven't looked. I need to look at that myself.
You can say I haven't verified it, but you can say that if that's the case, Zishan, if that's the case, I think that's special, and that is unique to Islam. That is not unique to, say, the Old and New Testament.
Well,
At the very least, you can concede that.
If you understand the purpose of these corruptions, it's like.
David, let's faster.
Okay, no. So
As an academic who likes science, likes mathematics, is this not amazing?
In some sense, it doesn't surprise me, because I don't
Thank
distrust. I don't distrust the Quran.
Thank you.
I mean, I might have done it at one point and thought that, well, because my Bible's right, your Quran must be wrong. But I don't think like that anymore.
Thank
It's
you.
like it doesn't. It's not. That's not. I've had to overcome this idea that me being right means that someone else is wrong, and I think that with God all things are possible. And but there is a sense in which whether what we understand agrees with the real world, and that's like a slightly different. But
If you ever go to Birmingham, feel free to check it out.
So it's a thing in Birmingham.
Yeah, it's in the University of Birmingham. BBC have covered it. Even if it's been recorded, you get a chance when you go home.
I guess I don't.
You don't trust the media.
No,
I don't blame you, frankly.
Anything that's publicised or pushed like that, it's like.
I don't really blame you.
It's like, but maybe.
I'm with you with that.
but maybe, right? So, I think it's more that we've got these texts, and there's something about them that is. See, for me, it's like it's a miracle just having the text, however it got to me, right? Because for all I know.
No, but David, the issue with that is anyone. The thing is, look, anyone can publish any text, and it can have beauty in it, and we can appreciate it.
It
but
does make sense. It does. So carry on.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, it's important to have testable things that you can test the authenticity of something.
Right. So.
For it to be objective.
So I think there is some sense in which we can look at history with that criteria of the witnesses agreeing, and use that as a kind of method of verification, it's like if you're saying it doesn't have vowels, I'm thinking, well, I don't know that, and like maybe it shouldn't have, and like
No, vowel. That's somebody who knows the Arabic language.
Right.
Vowels is something. Let's just say if you and I are learning.
No, if it's some scholar saying something, it's not the same thing as me being able to verify it for myself. That's like a different.
Yeah, this is something.
And it's like, but if it's simply that, well, I mean, I don't see why I would need to dispute it until I find something wrong with it. So, but I think there's something much more important about. Well, yes, you can have some old text. Is it from God? That's the more important thing. And so these criteria around the language and the truth,
preservation,
the truth of the scriptures. It's like how do you evaluate these things? It's like, I'm thinking of doing a PhD just on like some form of epistemology, just to kind of grasp and fully articulate this notion of truth. That somehow we can say, well, this is true in a way that's beyond just an accurate record of history or an accurate prophecy. It's got to be something about it that's more than it contains true sayings. That is, and I think mathematics gives a clue as to the way. But maybe in another sense, it's like, I mean, what I find is like, when I'm doing it personally, it doesn't matter because I'm reading this thing and I'm gaining knowledge and I'm gaining understanding and so on. And so why do I? It's like that's an operational effectiveness. That's an operational standard of truth. It's like my life is blessed by reading the Quran. It's a guide to my path. It says it's a guide to my path. You know, maybe some people understand that way, and that's really a very good way of understanding it.
But I guess what I would say, David, is that if you think merely listening to the Quran can give you so much benefit, and it does. Imagine if you saw it from the lens of it being from God, analyzing it.
Why do I not think it's from God? Of course I think it's from God.
Yeah, because if you believed it was from God,
it has to be from God because it's. I'm seeing that in the numerical patterns. I'm seeing that in the numerical patterns, and it's like impossible patterns.
But then when the Quran
these things are not something that you can just do statistically because statistics you always decay.
Okay, then what about
away
this?
some part of the information. It's something more like a digital code, like a DVD or a digital disc with a checksum with an error correcting code. And that's another way of thinking about these holy books. They're living books. They're living words. And when they're living words, they heal themselves. And I think that whatever sickness is going on with the new things, there were lots of readings that were introduced by Westcott and Hort that have been overturned and turned back to the King James. It's like these things will heal eventually, and it's through. It is going to affect the scholars because when you start studying holy books, they have an effect on you, even if you're not really a believer. I mean, that's another problem with some of this modern scholarship. It's like the top scholars, they'll look at these scholars, they're not even believers. They're not even believers, and my understanding of the scriptures is saying that's not a way to understand anything. You can't just believe in what other being taught by other
King James did a good job. With what resources that he had at his disposal. But one thing that I would say, David,
said that they were God's hands, they're God's secretaries. They just wrote down God's words in the same way it was dictated to Muhammad. They just wrote down God's words.
But here's what's interesting, and here's where we take a divergent path here. King James version, although it's a very respected kind of task that was undertook by King James. However, if you look at the preface of that same King James version, it admits, it acknowledges, it submits to the fact that there are not only minor mistakes in there, but major mistakes in there.
I don't know that the preface is authentic,
and that's fine. But let me just allow me to make my point. So my issue is this: if I was to go to a car salesman, and the car salesman says, this car is going to cost you £80,000. It's got minor problems. I was like, what do you mean minor problems? I don't, no minor problem. It's also got some major problems. I said, whoa. This is problematic here now.
It's very easy to take a Bible. The
Yeah.
easiest parts of the Bible to corrupt are the bits you're not looking at, which tends to be the preface and the maps in the back and like
No,
things like that.
what's interesting, David, is this.
And
I don't want to do injustice to this
Yeah.
and to yourself, but what I'm saying is that, look, if this was something that was interpolation, if this was something that was disagreed upon, surely,
I'm disagreeing with it,
and that's
So
fine.
It's like,
But just to make the point, if there was a preface on any Quran that made this claim that there are minor mistakes in it and major mistakes in it. You just saw the nod of the shaking of the head. It is something,
right?
it is not conceivable in the cranium of a Muslim that there is a mistake in the Quran. Why? And here's the next point. Why? Because if it claims to be somebody from somebody who is perfect, the all-knowing, the wise, the all-loving, I'm sorry, I refuse to believe that if this is the book that I have to follow, I refuse to believe that this is the book, and of course with evidence, not just emotionally, that this is, and this has scope of having mistakes in it. So that's the thing when it comes to that. Now with the King James Version, it came later on. Now the difference here, the reason why there's a category difference here is the Quran, the preservation started from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was able to listen, verify, correct. It was written down. The companions were able to cross-check. Before he died, the whole Quran was written, given to the wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to look after. Now this is something, what I'm trying to say, David, is something that's unparalleled. When it comes to others, I'm going to be honest with the Christians, and I'm not saying this is your belief, but with the Christians, they say, look, we are not going to defend the veracity of the Bible. The only thing we're going to defend is the message that has been passed on. But thereafter, I say,
the word of God.
but thereafter, sorry?
And then they don't have the word of God.
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
The thing is, it's like this is where I'd say you're not going to be able to defeat my point of view without opening your mind to the possibility that that's the case, and be able to accept, to examine the question. And I think a starting point might be some of these mathematical things, because there's like right or so like, and I need to understand.
Yeah, that's
what
a
that
falsification
means.
test. It's a
And
scientific experiment.
I think it will not just verify the King James, it will verify the Quran in a deeper way as well. And
Do it.
It will be of benefit.
Yeah,
because if we do, because that's the miracle. That's the miracle
Yeah.
of the resurrection, is that he came back to life, right? So even though the Christians or the scholars have murdered the Bible, that doesn't mean to say God has not preserved it and resurrected it.
We go a step
again.
forward. We don't say Jesus came to life. We say Jesus is alive, and he will return. So
Well, right.
both
so
of these
different-
things, you're right. Bro, I'm in the middle of a convo. Yeah, that's because he's such an interesting guy.
That's what we like it.
So here's the thing. Now here's where I take it a step forward. I say, and this is fantastic, maybe you haven't come across it. When it comes to the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the reason why it's so fantastic and so accessible and so loved by academics is something that me standing here in the park, I can tell you word for word what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, and follow me here. He said, Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. A person will be with whom he loves on the Day of Judgment. Yeah, because the companions
Jesus
are
said something very similar.
Yeah, of course.
Where your heart, where your treasure is, that where your where your heart is, that's where your treasure is. That's where your heart will be also.
And that's why we believe Jesus will come in the ummah, in the following of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because there is an understanding. The God of both is one, so naturally the message will be one. Yeah, of course. So now here's the interesting thing. Just if I can finish this.
Back to the Bible, and that's the interesting thing. If you haven't preserved,
Oh, look.
you really want to be.
Of
and actually,
course.
here's a test.
Yeah.
Let
Let me just make this fantastic point. Yeah, you're gonna like this. Yeah, al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. A person will be with whom he loves. Yeah. Now we get this from Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Yeah.
Okay.
So Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal gets it from Muhammad ibn Abu Adi. He gets it from Humayd at-Tawil. He gets it from Anas ibn Malik, and he gets it from Muhammad, peace be upon him. We know every single person in the chain, their name, their family, their tribe. Yeah, we know how reliable they were. We know how authentic they were. We knew their mental states and their reputation amongst the people. Their biography, in other words, and their biographies have been written to a degree that we can access it even today. For example, I can name you books. Al-Mughni. Yeah, Al-Mughni is one of those books. If in fact Imam Zahabi has got 4 compilations at least of just biographies of these people. And the point that I'm trying to say, David, here is the accessibility to the historicity of these sayings is something which can be critiqued. Historically as well, this person actually wasn't there at this time. This person had a defect in terms of his memory and he wasn't a good narrator. Now this is something that's unique and it's very special to Islam that we have. Anybody, you can go home and you can say, okay, it's recorded, let me check this. Like the Prophet peace be upon him said, don't kill women and children. We get it from Imam Malik, he gets it from Nafi, he gets it from Abdullah bin Umar, he gets it from the Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him.
I think the Prophet's words are the Prophet's words, which is the Quran, and like all these
those aren't necessarily the Prophet's words.
It's like
there's a distinction between the two.
Well, it's okay. It's dictation. So it's a dictation. So
yes.
So yeah, okay. I mean, you can argue that if you like, but
I'll give you an example.
That's for me is just informative rather than.
I'll tell you why it's not. A modern day case, Twitter, Facebook.
Right.
Yeah. They say this is was it fake news or unverified information, and then they ask for evidence, like where is this information from? That's how they verify these tweets, isn't it? Otherwise you've got these fake news and well, how else is it done? I have more Twitter every day.
The fact-checking organisations are just media organisations.
No. Okay. I see what you're saying.
So it's like that's not. It's like it's up to the individual to verify.
Yeah, and Twitter has come up with a way in which.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other nonsense.
Yeah, but that's what I'm referring to. I think that's where.
I mean, that's the problem. You've got to go through the biblical way, which is 2 witnesses, and there's got to be some subtlety in judgment there of like what it means. What does it mean to have a fair trial? How do you judge? And like all those things come from the examination of the law. I don't know how much is in the Quran about that. There must be something, but it's like you've got to understand how you evaluate truth. And it's like I've kind of knocked back a few points that it's like, yes, you can look at the physical evidence, but I think God has greater evidence than that. And it's more miraculous. It's more miraculous than that. Yeah. Because like you can show a book's old and it's been accurately copied.
That's because David, you.
But see, the thing is, there's a war against the Bible, and it's
a war against religion.
It's the Roman Church that's been fighting that war, as God's ministers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, God raised them for that purpose. I mean, I have to accept that. But that war is what keeps all these scholars in
one thing that I don't understand, like I'm not a Bible scholar, is when we turn towards the Quran, we say the Quran from beginning, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, the beginning to Min al-Jannati wan Nas. It is all the word of God. God has said that. However, when it comes to the Bible, you've got, and again, I don't claim to be a Bible scholar, and that's why you could see that I was interested in what you had to say and everything.
If you would claim to be
yeah, you have an issue against them. But then
weight with me.
Yeah, but then why is it that? Because the New Testament, no Christian has ever claimed to me every single word in the New Testament is the word of God.
Yes, but this is my point.
Yeah.
Is that this is the word of God. This is the authorized word.
What Paul's saying and this and that. Why is another guy coming in and adding his bit in there?
I was trying to tell you before that was all prophesied, and it's actually a story of redemption.
It should be directly from God to the prophet to the people. Simple.
Is it for you to say how it should be?
No, I'd say from human understanding. If there is such a big consequence about something, it should be simple to understand for the people.
There's a proverb. It's the glory of God to conceal a thing and the honour of kings to search out a matter.
Not himself though. If God is concealing himself, then I think that's not right.
Yes, but he does. He conceals himself from those who conceal themselves from him. If you seek him, so
he doesn't
in some
conceal
sense-
himself from the sincere.
In some sense, he's not. We can't see him in his perfect form because he's just too holy for us.
But as long as you're
But
sincere, you can see
if
him.
you can seek him,
Yeah.
and then he'll reveal yourself to him because you believe him as a
But you
God
can't
that-
say
that
he's
allows-
hiding himself indiscriminately, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing.
It has to be somebody- for the
he
seeker,
blesses
they can-
people
yeah.
in their ignorance because they don't want to know. They don't want to suffer from knowing that they're just totally off track. And actually, he blesses the just and the unjust. I mean, you said something very similar to yourself. But that's a sentiment in the Quran. It's like
Yeah.
this plan of redemption and mercy is just so glorious. But I just think we just need. There's just a lot of work to do, and actually, but one of the delights of studying these books is to grow in wisdom. You don't just
Yeah.
start from a baby, read the Quran,
Yes.
and then know you know everything. It's a journey.
Yes.
It's a ever, and it's a one that we're all taking as mankind.
Yeah.
And I believe it is one of the most. It's like I'm linking together timelines. The timeline of the Bible.
You're a maths guy. You appreciate maths.
And these numerical patterns.
Yeah.
And seeing how they correspond and using it to unlock revelation. And I think
Yeah.
that's a very important thing. Is that there's a seal.
Yeah.
And the seal is there until it's broken. And the breaking of the seal is the revelation. And it needs to be a revelation that's not just to an individual, but that can be shared.
Let me ask you something, David. Do you believe there's one God?
Well, in a sense, idols are gods, right? That's the way it's presented in the Bible. But it says like they are no gods, right? So in a deeper way, it's kind of more like a hierarchy. There is like a highest. There's a highest notion of God you can know, and that's like one God, right? But then people believe in different ways or have different idols.
Do
and
you
then God
believe that there are
speaks
multiple gods?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it depends what you mean by that. So pantheism is a thing, right? I mean,
Do you believe it's a thing? Is it acceptable to you? According to your
I understand
worldview.
what it means. I understand why pantheists are pantheists, and I understand why monotheists are monotheists. But it's still the same God that answers to them all. So there's a phrase in Ezekiel. He says something like, and it really shocked me when I read it. I shall answer them according to the multitude of their idols. So there's this idea of Lord, King of Kings.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I think that's even the first surah of the Quran, the maker of the world. In some sense, when you worship a different God, you live in a different world. It's a different empire, and the God over that empire all submit to that one God above them all. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, because what you're doing is you've taken a principle of the Bible, and you're saying because God says in the Quran He's the Lord of the worlds.
Yeah.
You look, one Lord, singular, worlds.
Right. Yes. So,
But that doesn't imply there are multiple gods.
In the same way that. But when you have an idol, that's a form of God. So if I have an imperfect
No.
form of God,
Let me give you an example.
Suppose I worship Krishna.
Let me give you an example.
I'm seeking the highest truth.
If I say
I'm led to
if I say there are
Allah.
multiple human beings and I present a stick, and I said, look, this is the other human being, and you're saying, oh, so that's a human being, and then I pick up a leaf, that's another human being. It's not another human being. So if God is only one, something else.
In some sense, there's one man.
Something that claims to be a God
You see, that's
doesn't make it a God. Do you see?
Well, right, but you're calling it a God, right? So it's just a use of language. We might understand the same thing when we're saying that, but I need to be able to communicate with people that talk in different ways. Do you see what I'm saying? You're not even seeing what I'm saying. So if I worship Krishna, it's Allah that's answering as if he's Krishna. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, because here's where we differ. Because there's the Hindu understanding that you have God, and there's different avatars that God can use to come down. Why? Because there's an inherent weakness there that God needs to come down in human form to get his point across. However, in Islam, we say God is transcendent of that. God doesn't need to come in the form of an avatar, doesn't need to come in a different form. The form that God has and what He's chosen is sufficient. That's the difference.
Talk to God yourself. This is what I would say. You talk to God in a Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, when the people ask you, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where's the word, where's the Lord, where's the God? Say, talk to them yourself. Allah listen to you and answer you. And look, today you come here and look at what's going on. It's fantastic, isn't it? You met me, and I don't know you, you don't know me, and here we are after 4 hours, 3 hours, and we're still having a conversation. And this is a miracle. This is a miracle. Because you like to know about
Rushan, I just want to say congratulations, you're doing really well.
Barakallahu
MashaAllah,
feek,
MashaAllah.
Barakallahu
I wish you all the best, and I pray to Allah, inshallah, to reward you with the best.
That's the best gift you can give me today. The dua.
MashaAllah.
Barakallahu feek. Wa iyyak. Jazakallah for your patience as well, uncle.
But we should have a conversation,
Yeah,
and
conversation,
and
yes,
help
yeah.
each other's
Yeah,
understanding.
yeah, that's
and I think that's the important thing. And I think that, you see, the way, you see, in biology, when you have a muscle cell, it has its function. It has to have a limited function to be able to function as a muscle cell. So in the same way, God will speak to people and create these different sets that do think about the things and do things differently. Otherwise, would it all be too similar and everything would fall apart? Because there needs to be a complexity to the world to bring about Allah's purpose.
complexity. When you word use this one, then you completely lost. Islam is the simplest religion. One God, worship Him, forget everything. Quran tell you, that's it. That's the way I told it.
I have a different concept from that. Because simple just means fooling.
Yeah, that's
I mean, so there's
Simple just means?
not wise.
Okay.
So there's like a simple understanding of something. It's just very plain simple, and we can get caught up in academic la-di-da, which is like so the question about conversation like this: what is the fruit of it? Right? What is it practically going to do? How is it actually going to help anyone? Well, I don't know. I haven't got. I hope I've given you some clues, but I would suggest that if you're witnessing to Christians, I can help you with showing some scriptures that would challenge them and cause them to think, because that's what you want them to do, is start to think about their own scriptures, because that will eventually lead them to God.
I think the brother was saying, and I found this really amazing, he said he reads the Quran at night. Sorry, you don't read it. Yeah, he listens to it. It's played.
I read Surah Fatiha to him, and what he said, ask him.
What did you say? How did you feel?
Yeah, how do you feel when I read the Surah Fatiha?
I won't just
He said, I feel.
It spoke
when
to his soul, yeah.
I listen, especially if I come to the end, especially like if I listen to so it's like 10 hours, I can pick out the videos on YouTube because they're 10 hours long. It's not just like cut off at 3 hours. It's like 10 hours long. And as I'm coming to the end, it's like an amazing feeling in my heart. It's almost I can't describe it without being slightly rude. It's just this amazing feeling. But also just in the last few weeks I've been doing this, you see, because I've not really listened to the Quran. But it's totally different from. So if you're witnessing, I would say when you speak the verse before you give your interpretation, because it gives them a chance at least. Yeah. And also, if you're explaining Arabic words as you're doing it, you're bringing people closer to being able to. Yeah, you just say, oh well, this word such and such means Maliki means Lord or King or something like whatever. That's mask or something. And it's like you're giving some kind of understanding, so that when I hear it, I've got. Even if your understanding isn't accurate, because I think the way to understand the words accurately is to listen, is to hear the Quran, and the definitions will be in there itself. But also try using the King James when you're showing verses to people, and observe the difference. Because here's what the King James did. King James united our kingdom, and it then went out round the world. It united our kingdom and possibly the empire. and in some sense that empire still rules today because the even the commonwealths are still notionally or maybe in a real sense underneath the king. Now when Queen Elizabeth expressed her faith, she said she held to the sayings of Jesus, and that's an important difference from just being a Christian. The sayings of Jesus are like one of the most fundamental things. It's like you build a new house on a rock. But in some sense, I think that the true rock is kind of.
I wish he came a bit earlier. If King James had come a bit earlier,
King James came at the appointed time. It was appointed from the.
I think the Bible had been
marked by a star in the heaven.
I think the Bible
a star that was seen during the day for 2 or 3 weeks.
I think initially we discussed this already, but it's the early times that are so important in the preservation of a text, and the early times of the Bible, the Christians were persecuted. They were not at a place that they were able to kind of preserve the book. In fact, the people that were even writing and copying, they were actually not copyists.
That's all the history that I really, I don't.
You accept?
See, the thing is, I don't even agree with the dates in this history. I think there's 100 years missing. There's 100 years that's been added into the timeline. So I identify.
Around what time?
Well, I'm not quite sure when it was added in, to be honest. But if you move the dates, I think Jesus was crucified in 134 AD by modern calendar, by the AD calendar. But that's exactly the date of the Bar Kokhba revolt in history. So whether that, and people talk about Josephus and stuff, and it's like, well, Josephus isn't necessarily rival. He was working with the Romans. He was paid by the Romans, and he says some very odd things, like there was a replica made of Jerusalem, and it's like, where's that? Where's that? I mean, possibly, but where is it? And the Roman history, it's like, that's out by 100 years. Julius Caesar, I can't find any physical evidence of Julius Caesar. I can't find any ancient inscriptions, any coins that actually say Julius Caesar on them. Where is the evidence of Julius Caesar? It's propaganda, and that's the nature of the Romans. They'll change.
It's interesting you talk about coins, because I got into coins and that sort of stuff, a bit of the historicity and the likes.
Good day. Thank you very much.
So this was a coin. I don't know if you're like a man of history or whatnot. So this is one of the coins. It was within like 100 years of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Right.
You can see this inscriptions about a bit of the Quran, about the Prophet, the Hijrah calendar. So it's this sort of evidence that you're saying you would require or would be helpful for you.
Numerical connection between the date for the Quran and the date of the King James Bible.
The thing with the when it comes
connected with the Revelation, I'm not sure I can talk about it now.
Yeah.
But this is something that I'm working on.
Okay.
And there's like, and when you set that timeline up, it points exactly back to this part.
Let me tell you one other thing, because it will be interesting for us to kind of touch base again, maybe when I've looked at some manuscripts and some stuff as well. But there's another thing, which is I want you to understand that the central kind of pillar of Islam, which is quite simply, there is one God with no partners, no associates. He doesn't require anything, anyone. If someone claims to be a God, good for them. Somebody claims to be a thing, good for them. But and God uses this argument in the Quran as well, and this is in the Quran, that had there been multiple gods, there would be conflicting wills. For example, if one God wants the tree to be red, another one green, another one blue, then the question would be, what color would the tree be?
The thing is, I'm not arguing with any of the words.
No, I get that, but what I want to do is,
concepts of that.
yeah,
It's just that I explain it in a different way.
that's fine.
And I think that.
And I wanted to explain it in a way that maybe you've heard of it, because I don't know you well enough. So I was like, at least, so you kind of leave understanding, just like with amongst Christians, the crucifixion of Jesus is not, sorry, I used the word Christians, amongst people that follow the Bible, the central tenet to them is the crucifixion of Jesus.
See, I mean,
That's what you suggested, no?
yeah, you see, that was part to do with numerology as well, but it pointed me at his resurrection rather than his crucifixion, and so I think this whole thing's about life and not death. And you know, the whole thing about the Passover is like there were things to do with the Passover that you were meant to keep the Passover with unleavened bread.
We're going to have to leave in a few minutes because of prayer. I just thought I'd give you a heads up so I don't just abruptly end it. But yeah, finish your thought.
Leave it as thought. So the Passover was meant to be kept with unleavened bread. The leaven represents the corruptions. Jesus spoke about these things. It wasn't like it wasn't meant to happen. This is a work of God. He knew it was going to happen, which is why he kind of said all the things he said and warned us about the doctrine of the scribes and the Pharisees, which is why I don't hold to the teachings of the scribes and the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
David, we love and we adore Jesus. Sorry, there's a wasp there. But the thing is, it comes back to the original point. Give the exact words of Jesus, and there was a way that we could verify that it's authentic. Okay. We would have absolutely. For example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, sometimes quotes things that Jesus has said. The Quran verifies things that are in the Bible, and because we believe that obviously it's been changed, we don't take it at face value.
I think the way forward is rather than try and judge the matter before considering it, is to say, well, we can work together on what passages in the Bible to show to Christians to make your arguments more strong. Because if you're doing that kind of thing, you're at least advancing their knowledge and their questioning other things. Because it's in questioning that we get closer to the truth. And it's like, we've got to be able to question these things. And I would say, just try using the King James instead of like an ESV or whatever you use when you read it to them. And
I know the King James version is
seeing whether it has a different effect. But not a new King James, because that's similar.
There's so many versions, David.
Well, that's the thing, and some people like make reference Bibles with King James, and they change the words. It's like when you have to change the words to make your point, it's like, I'm not really interested. I mean, it's kind of like, no. But, and there's another thing, one last thing. All these modern Bibles have copyrights on them. It's extremely lucrative. You have to pay license fees. Well, no. There's certain fees that might be waived, but you submit your form to the. Well, they encourage you to request permission, and when you request permission, they give you a form to fill in, which includes like, well, how many? What are you being paid in donations? I just find that, you see, I
can see why you don't like that. Yeah.
You see, the authorized version, because it's hundreds of years old, and the people don't mind you copying it, even if it's not an authorized version. You can apply to the king to get the royal, whoever administers it. Maybe it's the CUP or something. The people who administer you get paid from the king to get an authorized version. And then, you know, it's your job to do it carefully, right? But you can't make money out of a book that's freely
I get you.
Right?
I get you,
So, and then it's like, and one of the worst things about this thing.
There's no copyright on the Quran.
And then at the end of this form it says, "I will promise to get you back to you within 6 weeks." It's like, I don't need your permission to promote a mug with a verse from the Bible on it. And actually,
that's appalling. Actually,
So
ridiculous.
But God's raised them for that purpose, and it's caused a deeper examination of Scripture. I think it's taken us away from just a simple being too simple about Scripture to try and really get at the things of God more deeply. And even as having this discussion now, causes us to go, to think about things more deeply that we wouldn't think about and have different perspectives.
Definitely.
And like, it is a question that's still an open question for me. Exactly how do we prove the Quran 100% correct? Because I think that if we can get that mathematical argument that we can present to mathematicians and scientists that are atheists, I don't know, but because ultimately it's God's job to reveal Himself at the right time.
Well, you're definitely right. There are mathematical arguments. There's philosophical arguments. Assalamu alaikum. You're right. There's mathematical. Sorry, not philosophical. There's mathematical. There's prophecies. Again, there's chains of narration, and there's the falsification test that you identified as well, which is the falsification test is actually, if it was written other than God, then there would be contradictions within it. Bring a contradiction if you think that you are truthful. And of course, there's a verse like it as well. And there's one, because you're a mathematician, I think it would be a great service if I didn't really leave you with this. It's in line. I'm not just going to randomly just give you something. But this was one thing that really kind of, I think it's easy to disseminate. So there's in the Quran, there's a chapter of Noah. Yeah, each chapters have their own names. So the chapter of Noah is it's 71. Yeah, so chapter 71, and there are 28 verses in this chapter. When we do a simple calculation, 71 minus 28, which is minus the two numbers, we get 43. Now bear with me here. 43 is the time that Noah is mentioned in the whole Quran. 43 chapters are before this chapter that don't mention Noah, and 43 chapters after it that don't mention Noah. And the ones that do mention Noah are the amount of verses, which is 28. 28 chapters mention Noah. Noah, the Arabic word, you'll appreciate, that is Nuh, which is composed of Nun, Waw, and Ha, 3 letters.
Same in Hebrew.
Fantastic. So it's a 3-letter word. The first appearance of Nuh is in chapter 3, verse 33.
Right.
In the chapter of Noah, it is the 3rd word mentioned 3 times. So, and then if you multiply it, I mean, you can start doing all these things, but I could share this book with you, but I thought you'd appreciate it as a mathematician. Yeah.
If I say them to my mathematician friends, they'll say, oh, well, you're just looking for patterns and then you see them, and it's like...
Well, I could look for patterns in another chapter. Why don't I find it? Do you see?
Well,
because as a Muslim, surely we would have encyclopedias of these patterns, but even you looking for this pattern, like Nuh, a 3-letter word, in chapter 3, verse 33, then it's...
So I would go on to say, can you understand a new meaning from that? Because when I used to do these things, you start to unpack new meanings. But I'll show you, next time we meet, I'll show you something similar to do with 786 and the Bible.
Perfect. David, it was a pleasure. Take care. I'm just going to take this microphone off you. Yeah, take care and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks, bye. We need to pray Asr, innit?
I prayed already.
You prayed? Right, I'm going to pray. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
I love you so much, man.
Thank you, brother.
You know how much of a legend you are? I'm from Toronto, Canada, right?
Oh, wow.
And I was walking by. You don't know how much your videos have helped me, man.
Subhanallah.
No, I'm not even lying.
Allah.
Like, your videos, because for me, I'm not the most educated Islamically and everything, right? But watching your content is really easy to digest, especially when you're casually in your office or you're eating lunch and everything. I've shared your videos so much with my friends, my family, and everyone around me.
That's awesome, bro.
No,